And welcome everybody to the Miami Pioneers, Natives of Dade, May 2nd monthly meeting of 2021. And we're here with the 100 Ladies of Deering. And we're going to talk about their recent wonderful restoration of the stained glass sculpture that's unique to the Deering estate. And let me introduce Becky Matkov, who's the past president of the Deering Foundation. The ladies, what was your exact title there, Becky?
Oh, I was president of the board of the Deering Estate Foundation. Okay, and I'm a member of the 100 Ladies too.
And if you could, let me leave it to you to introduce some of your fellow Deering ladies that are with us today.
Well, Lita DeValdovielso is our current president of the board of the foundation. And then Nancy Eglin is the current president of the 100 Ladies of Deering. So, and then
well, there's royalty. And our presentation today has been put together by Elizabeth Battaglia, who is very talented at these things, and we're lucky to have her. And so, Elizabeth, if you will, would you like to begin your presentation?
Absolutely. Can everyone see on the screen the first slide?
I do.
Excellent. Becky, you want me to go ahead and show the little teaser video?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Since we've already introduced ourselves, you can certainly see this is a beautiful overview shot from a drone that was done during a film that we'll talk about a little bit later. But today we're going to talk about two stained glass panels that the 100 Ladies of Deering took on as a restoration project and are currently on display at the Stone House, which is the house in the picture with the red roof. So first, we have our short teaser video that we did to generate interest in the pieces. So let's see if I can get that to play for everyone. Great. And with that, I'm going to have Becky talk a little bit about the Deering Estate, the Deering Estate Foundation, and the 100 Ladies of Deering as background, and then we'll go ahead and get into some of the specifics on the flight into Egypt.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I hope all of you, and I think all of you on the screen, have been to the Deering Estate many times. But it's 453 acres. That is an absolute one-of-a-kind historic, cultural, archaeological, and ecological treasure on Biscayne Bay. Thanks to advocacy efforts by conservationists, garden clubs, environmentalists, and with the support of then Governor Bob Graham, the state of Florida purchased this property in 1985 from the heirs of Charles Deering, who was a Chicago industrialist and an art collector extraordinaire, a philanthropist, preservationist, and conservationist. This magnificent property has been managed by Miami-Dade County Parks since 1985 as a park and museum with a multitude of tours and cultural and educational programs and special events for the public.
And before we go to the next slide, I just want to point out on this slide, you can see at about 3 o'clock the People's Dock. So if you have never been out to this public access spot to see the beautiful Biscayne Bay, this is where it is. So,
right, yes, thank you. This was the property of Charles Deering, who lived from 1852 to 1927 when he died at the Deering Estate. He was not only, as I said, an industrialist and early preservationist and conservationist, but he was a world traveler who was a talented artist himself and had a deep and far-ranging appreciation for art and artists. In 1922, his collection of 4,000 pieces of art, appraised at $60 million, included tapestries, medieval art, Chinese screens, sculpture, rare books, and works by Goya, El Greco, Velázquez, and Rembrandt, as well as works by his good friends, Spanish artist Ramon Casas, Swedish impressionist Anders Zorn, and American artist John Singer Sargent, who painted this portrait of Charles Deering in Coconut Grove in 1922, when Sargent paid a lengthy visit to Charles and James Deering at Vizcaya. Between 1913 and 1916, Charles acquired 380 acres and the Richmond Inn, a pioneer-era hotel, which he remodeled as a winter home with his wife Marion in 1917, building a turning basin for his two boats, a carriage house, a pump house, and constructing coral rock walls and a Chinese designed bridge. And in 1922, Charles built the fireproof Mediterranean revival style stone house designed by architect Phineas Pace to house the extensive art collection that at that point he had brought back from Maricel, Acetus, Spain. A family member recalls that art literally covered the walls in the stone house from floor to ceiling. This is looking out from the front porch of the Deering estate, and you can see just the incredible beauty that is at Deering. In 1989, the Deering Estate Foundation was chartered as a nonprofit 501c3 to provide financial support and raise public awareness of the Deering estate and to perpetuate Charles Deering's legacy of conservation, culture, and community. The foundation has a small staff, our own administrative offices, and engaged membership, which is open to the public. Our membership totals now over 1,650 people or families, and a board of directors and trustees composed of business and civic leaders. Everyone, including all of the general public, is encouraged to join the Deering Estate Foundation as a member, which entitles one to free admission to the Deering Estate all year long and discounted fees for programs and special events at the park, such as the next event, which is the Deering Seafood Festival, which is now scheduled for October 24th with a chef's table for a gourmet dinner on October 22nd. As you all may know, it was postponed from last spring to this past fall, and then to this spring, and now because of COVID, it's once more been postponed to the fall, and we're hopeful that it's going to be able to be a wonderful event once again. In 2012, the Deering Estate Foundation board member Cecilio Fox, you can see her in the white sweater, initiated the idea of forming a philanthropic circle of women within the foundation membership who were willing to give a higher level of financial and volunteer support for special projects for the Deering Estate. Thus, the 100 Ladies of Deering was created. Bound by a love of historic preservation and a sense of camaraderie, this dedicated group of volunteers meets regularly to work on projects to promote the estate and legacy of Charles Deering. Projects of the 100 Ladies have included restoring and refurbishing the rooms in the Richmond Cottage and the Deering Estate Ballroom, our stone house. This is one of the sitting rooms in the cottage, and the kitchen. And then this is Mrs. Deering's bedroom in the stone house. And for Christmas, the 100 Ladies decorate the house and work with interior designers as well. And the 100 Ladies put up a wonderful Christmas tree or holiday tree in the ballroom. And a major project in 2018 of the 100 Ladies was the production of On This Land, the Charles Deering Estate. This award-winning 27-minute film has aired on public television, Channel 2, is shown at the Deering Estate daily, and is available for free online or for sale as a DVD. We also produced this in Spanish as well as English. I wrote the script and chaired the project. Maria McDonald, the 100 Ladies president the last 2 years, co-chaired it. Carl Kesser was the producer director. That's his son, Jason Kesser. And this was the great-grandson of Charles Deering, Stephen Strawn, who was interviewed and appears on screen in the movie, as does the next film, the next slide. We interviewed Governor and then U.S. Senator Bob Graham, who of course was incredibly supportive of the state acquiring the Deering Estate back in 1985. And in 2019, the 100 Ladies completed their project of restoring the flight into Egypt, the stained glass panels you're going to hear about in a minute. And they produced this video, which is shown in the room where the panels are located on the second floor of the stone house. So now, Elizabeth, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Becky. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is watch this film. Hopefully we will not have too many buffering issues. This is a film that was done by the 100 Ladies in support of the restoration.
Across 15th century Europe, many religious icons were intentionally destroyed. 2 stained glass panels survived these turbulent times. Believed to have originally hung in separate chapels, these pieces were brought together as part of Charles Deering's vast and comprehensive art collection and hung together in the stone house at the Deering Estate during the early 1920s. The pieces are now once again reunited and on display at the Deering Estate. Each piece underwent a complete and
I'm Maria McDonald, and I'm the president of the 100 Ladies of Deering. The 100 Ladies of Deering is a philanthropic circle of the Deering Estate Foundation, dedicated to the preservation of the Deering Estate. We fell in love with this place, but the homes were empty. Our founder thought it was important to start bringing original pieces that belonged to Charles Deering and the family so that they themselves could tell a story. Historically, we have worked closely with the Deering Estate curatorial staff, and we are the primary funders of art conservation here at the Deering Estate. My name is Bethany Gray, and I am the Historic Preservation and Curatorial Manager at the Deering Estate. The Flight into Egypt panels are 2 centuries-old stained glass panels that were original to Charles Deering's collection. One of the pieces bears a date of 1552. The other piece appears to be a little bit older, likely from the late medieval period, based on the materials and the style of the artwork. They feature strong religious iconography as well as architectural elements, both of which are major collecting interests of Charles Deering's. Both pieces hung in the Stone House in the 1920s and were present here through the 1960s. And as the historic house museums were established here at the Deering Estate, the pieces were regifted to the estate, and we've been in the process of restoring them so that they can be displayed for the public.
I'm Julie Flynn. I'm the Assistant Objects Conservator at RLA's Miami studio. When the stained glass panels first arrived, Rosa and I looked at them together, and we were first struck by how cloudy and hazy the glass was. It just wasn't reflecting the way we normally believe glass should. We wanted to bring out the vibrancy of the color and make it look like glass again. We are working to clean off this spotted rust-colored layer with an abrasive compound that we mix together here. And using the mechanical action of the toothbrush, we're removing a lot of the grime so you can see the true color of the glass beneath. We unstable the glass seamed within the canes. So we inserted a film material between the glass and the canes to prevent the glass from moving around on display or in transport.
When I first saw the panels, I was really taken back by the condition of them. You really couldn't see the colors of the glass. The metal was rusty. It was difficult to think they could be restored to its original vibrancy. So during our visit to the conservator, we were so excited because these panels came alive. They were full of color and vibrant and just absolutely glorious. We never imagined that they could be restored to that state.
Right now, I'm on the final treatment step of the stained glass itself, which is the surface coating. It fills in the scratches, haziness, so it allows the light to come through better and the colors become more vibrant. These panels were brought to us over a year ago, and we're extremely happy with the results. The work was meticulous and challenging and different from anything we'd ever done before, but we are very happy that the panels are going back to their home.
Preservation of the art and architecture of the Deering Estate is an ongoing priority. And thanks to the interest and generosity of our philanthropic partners, it was the perfect opportunity for us to take on this complex project. Our excitement about bringing these pieces back to the Deering Estate is that the visitor is going to be able to go up close, share them with the South Florida community today and future generations.
The historic significance of these pieces cannot be overestimated, as very few stained glass representations of religious art from this period have survived centuries marked by the ravages of war, political upheavals, and natural deterioration. The return of the 2 stained glass panels to the Deering Estate's Historic House Museum collection is in keeping with Charles Deering's vision to provide the public with the opportunity to view and appreciate his masterfully built collection of fine art and antiquities.
Great. So in the end of this presentation, I do have where you can find this film online. I know that on my end, I saw a couple of glitches. So if you want to watch it again, you can watch it as many times as you want, either by going to the Deering Estate or, again, I have the links online. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the pieces as we know them within Charles Deering's collection, and then talk about the pieces themselves. So Becky mentioned that Charles Deering moved his art collection from Maricel to the Deering Estate in about 1922. Maricel is a site in Spain where he restored a large hospital and really helped redevelop a town in Sitges to house his art collection. but for many different reasons, he decided to move it to South Florida into the stone house, which he built specifically for that purpose. So he documented a lot of his artwork that hung in Maricel in a series of autochromes or photographs at the time, which is how we know a little bit about the pieces as they hung there. Once they moved to the stone house in 1922, we learned some different information about them. We know that they hung in the east and the west windows on the second floor of the Great Hall landing area. We know that they both shared the same theme, and so there's been some speculation about what the theme of flight into Egypt meant to Charles. Did it have anything to do with the fact that he had to leave Spain and move to South Florida? We don't quite know, but he certainly placed these two places in very prominent locations within his house that would get the direct sun both in the morning and in the evening. It's very interesting, to see that the pieces survived the hurricane of 1926 in the house, and upon his death, they were given to his daughters. We don't know a ton about exactly what happened. We know that they hung in the house for a period of time after he passed away. But what we do know is that once the Deering estate became the property of Miami-Dade, eventually the pieces made their way back to the Deering estate, and they were kept in storage until the 100 ladies took on the specific project to raise money to restore them. We worked with RLA, who is a local conservation company, and I know has been mentioned on a couple of other presentations for the Miami Pioneers that I have heard in previous weeks, so I'm sure you're familiar with their work. Specifically about the panels, a couple of interesting notes. There are 2 panels on display at the Deering estate, and they share the same theme, which is the Holy Family's flight into Egypt. This was a very commonly used theme throughout the medieval period and appears in a number of panels across churches and cathedrals in Europe. A couple of interesting notes. When the restoration was done on these panels, you'll see some white pieces here. That's because, in keeping with current conservation practices, we did not look to make them look brand new. We looked to restore them. And so we put white or clear glass in where there were actually missing pieces. So you can still see what is original, but get an idea of the beauty of the pieces themselves. This particular piece is very interesting because it was not documented in Maricel. It was not listed until the 1924 inventory. This is the piece that hung in the west side of the Stonehouse Gallery. It is a tall piece, about 60 inches tall, 27 inches wide. This piece is very interesting because you can see on the bottom, it has a date written on it of 1552. From our research, this is not necessarily the day of creation. It could be when it was installed, or possibly if it was ever recommemorated as a memorial piece in memorial to a specific person. It mentions on here, Omator, I'm going to speak Latin, right? Omator Dei Menentomai, from the 1585 hymn of Ave Maria, which translates into English as, "O Mother of God, remember me." And this is a very common theme for the dedication or interments of specific people in ancient churches. We do know that this window is specifically built for a window that was small and arched. The other piece that we have on display at the Deering estate is this square panel. As noted, it's believed to be even older, possibly from the medieval time. This particular square panel was noted in the monochromes that were taken of the pieces from Maricel. So there are 3 additional pieces out there that we hope one day to find out what happened. Where did they end up between Maricel and the stone house? This piece is very particularly of interest because it has symbols and it bears a resemblance to a very famous piece called the Pitcairn piece, which is displayed in Pennsylvania. from the 12th century. The picturing piece has been named in a lot of Metropolitan Museum of Art research and things like that. You can look at all of the different pieces, and how you can tell that they hung in different cathedrals is because the symbols or frame, which is considered an architectural element, is different between the two pieces. I'll just scroll back. So this piece might be French because it has the fleur-de-lis, and this piece has acorns in it. And so there's just a lot of interesting research that can be done to try and nail down where these particular pieces came from the symbols that are found in them. In this picture as well, you can see where there are some plain white glass pieces that were placed to indicate where pieces were lost along the way. But overall, it is amazing that these pieces are available for public display here in Florida. I think from our research that there are between 5 and 16 other pieces of the stained glass themed flight into Egypt, even in the state of Florida. Very few of them are on public display. So it's a real gift to the community. One of the projects that the 100 Ladies of Deering has taken on is some ongoing research to answer some of these unknown questions. Why did Charles Deering pick these pieces? How did they fit in with a broader part of his collection? Where are the 3 pieces we have documented from Maricel that didn't make it to the stone house? And how did this 4th piece, or this additional panel show up? We are currently investigating, doing some research to use scientific methodology to better date and find out what location the pieces came from by analyzing the materials of the pieces. Most times artists made the glass for a particular piece at the actual site of the cathedral that it was going into. So based on the geology of different locations across Europe, we might be able to further nail down, are these French? Are these Spanish? Are these Italian? We don't know, but we're looking into some of those questions. We're also dealing with some different scholars to get an understanding of how these pieces compare to other pieces that have been found and that are documented either as having hung in various cathedrals and churches across Europe or still there today. Certainly many of these pieces have been lost through various wars, World War I, World War II. Think about this. We're particularly lucky that Charles Deering brought these pieces to Florida because he brought them in 1922, just as Spain implemented new restrictions on exporting artworks out of the country. So these pieces are really rare and special. This is my pitch to come see them in person. They are more glorious than anything you're going to see on this Zoom call. The Deering Estate is open from 10 to 4 daily. As Becky mentioned, the pieces are located on the 2nd floor in a special room called the Maricel room, and the film is there available. We don't have guided tours inside the houses right now, but if you contact Becky or myself, we would be more than happy to act as docents and give you a tour of the houses. On this particular page, I have put our contact information, the websites for the 100 Ladies of Deering and the Deering Estate Foundation and the Deering Estate, and then direct links to both the film that Becky mentioned in English and in Spanish, and then this Flight into Egypt film. So that concludes the presentation that we've prepared for you today. And now we are happy to answer questions.
That was absolutely fascinating, I must say, and wonderful to get such in-depth background and information about the significance of them. I mean, they are beautiful on their own, and to understand that you're still continuing to look into the significance of these. But absolutely, I could see the stunned look on some of your faces when you started looking at the product restored. And it did look kind of grungy before, didn't it? And certainly of lesser value. And now it's absolutely just stunning, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Meg Wallace, who's on my committee for 100 Ladies of Deering, is actually spearheading all of our efforts to try and answer some of these unanswered questions. we've certainly taken these pieces. They were rough, they were discolored, they had years of grime on them. And RLA did a phenomenal job of getting into the beautiful state that they're in. But we still have these unanswered questions about how did they come into Charles Deering's collection and where did they come from? Because certainly each one must have an incredible story.
I have a question. Do you have a picture side by side of before and after of each of those things?
I do not, but you know what? I will put one into the slide presentation before I send the final version to Robert so that you'll be able to see in the final slideshow that he'll make available the exact before and after, or I can send them to you. I have individual pictures, but not necessarily side by side.
Thank you. That would be very interesting, I think, to see how the conservators managed to clarify things.
Absolutely. Who else has a good question or suggestion for us?
Do you have any idea of their current valuation?
You know, that is a great question. I think that they are considered to be invaluable. Now, that being said, I was just on a call with Jennifer Tistheimer recently. They are insured through the Deering Estates insurance policy. But the truth is that if some catastrophic thing happened and they were destroyed, there's no replacement for them.
Absolutely.
How are you protecting them from, for instance, another hurricane like Andrew or something like that?
Right. So I think as far as that goes, there's a plan in place to take care of all of the artwork at the Deering Estate in case of a catastrophic hurricane coming. The Deering Estate stone house was specifically built to withstand hurricanes, withstand all kinds of things. It has, 18 to 3-foot walls. It has copper doors in case of a fire. I actually don't think that there are plans to remove them, especially because they're located on the 2nd floor. But I think that is a great question.
Well, for example, some stained glass windows at churches that are in areas that could be subject to riot or whatever have you, have a coating on the outside of the window, a separate piece of plexiglass or something like that to protect them. Have y'all planned anything like that?
We did
These
that.
pieces aren't actually hanging in a window. They're on a wall and then they are backlit. So they are not in an area, like the windows would be boarded up and the pieces are in a different area. They're not, I appreciate what you're saying. And yes, if they were direct next to the window, we would absolutely make sure that they were well protected, but they're actually on an interior wall and they're backlit.
Gotcha. Understand.
All things considering, that's pretty safe.
Yeah.
But having lived through hurricanes, we know that nothing is absolute. But yeah, that's fantastic. And you're right. There is no way, even though they are insured, there's no way to estimate the value. If they had to be repaired, I just thought to myself while I was watching that, what if somebody dropped it, putting it in the van? I mean, like
I know.
that'd just be like, like one of those, horrid moments. But everybody was very safe with what they did. And
I think that's always such a challenge in moving any artwork, or we had looked into, I had this great idea, I thought, of having a John Singer Sargent display of the original Charles Deering for our centennial. I thought of this several years ago, and then we started looking into the cost, and it was going to be like $250,000 just because of all the transportation, the insurance, I mean, it's
kind of crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I will give a pitch. So as we've talked a lot in this presentation, the stone house was built in 1922, which means it's coming up on the centennial next year. And there will be a year-long series of events highlighting the stone house architecture, highlighting the innovations that went into that as construction. It had the first elevator, I think, in all of Florida from the Otis Company. So in addition to the artwork, there will be a lot of celebrations going on at the Deering Estate all next year. And we certainly hope to be able to present this additional research that we're working on for the Flight into Egypt panels.
Well, I see a new presentation in the future.
Yes, don't worry.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Updated.
Well, that is absolutely wonderful. Questions from the audience? Everybody, you know, you can unmute yourself and ask a question the way Frank did. If you have some ideas for the ladies to make a question. Garland Lewis has her hand raised. Garland.
All the way from Richmond, Virginia. You made the comment that there were, I believe, 5 or 6 other panels in private collections. Do you know who these, here in Florida, do you know who these individuals are?
That is a good question. So when I was reviewing my notes, it's unclear whether or not there are 5 or up to 16 different panels in Florida. And I don't think any of them are on public display. We've talked about trying to do a map of where these type of pieces can be seen, either in Florida or across the United States. But that's something that we've discussed and is not done yet. We know that in Pennsylvania, there are some pieces. We know that in New York City, there are some pieces hanging in museums, but they are very, very rare.
But in terms of stained glass masters,
Yeah.
I think you inferred that Flight into Egypt was not an unpopular theme for them to try to work on. So there may have been different variations, expressions of this theme through many different places and times with the same basic theme, right?
Absolutely. In Europe, it was very common as a memorial theme. So if someone passed away and their family wanted to dedicate a window within a church or cathedral, then this might be the theme that was selected to go along with that.
Right.
In general, the Flight into Egypt theme is very common because churches used these stained glass windows as pictorial representations of important parts of the Bible. Well,
Right.
Of course, Flight into Egypt is a really key part of the biblical story.
And churches were full of these parables expressed in visual. And
Yeah.
so I think any big cathedral would have had some theme of Flight into Egypt as one of their major theme panels, wouldn't they? Good chance.
Yeah, there's a good chance. Certainly within any large metropolitan area, there would be at least 5, well, who knows how many, right? But there would be some percentage of it. And I see Dolly has a question.
I do. Who is the actual owner of the property? Is it the state or the county?
Nancy? Or Lita?
I think it's the state, correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, Becky, but it's the state that owns it and it's the county that's managing it.
Okay,
That's what I
correct.
understood. I just wanted to verify that. We're doing an inventory of government-owned historic sites and putting together a report on the condition and use of them.
That's a
So
good
that's why-
idea.
Very interesting.
I
Thank
know
you.
that Arch Creek Park is also owned by the state and managed by Dade County Parks and Recreation, I think similarly, and they're both archaeologically important sites.
Right.
But having said that, we're always a little nervous that these deals could go bad somehow, you know, so you've got to have a good team of people ready to react and support and defend these situations. I mean, you could have a governor who just gets rid of a bunch of state land, you know, or you could have a county crisis where they say we have to just close parks, you know.
And that was one reason that the Deering Estate Foundation was founded, actually, because when the county was, the management of the Deering Estate was turned over to the county, Bill Bird, who was the director of parks at that time, said, "Oh, this is great. However, we don't have funds. We don't, I mean, this was, thanks, but that was not such a blessing to him personally." And he thought,
Yeah,
oh my
because
God.
something else would have to be given up.
He turned to Audrey Ross, actually, a good friend of his, and she organized some of her friends together to form the Deering Estate Foundation, which was chartered by the state of Florida as a nonprofit, because it was obvious that the county at that point in time needed more financial support. And since the Deering Estate was a new thing and with very low awareness among the public, is that that was why the foundation was formed, to increase the visibility and the financial stability of.
And I think you had the same issue when the Deering family turned over Vizcaya, or when the Monroe family turned over the Barnacle. It's absolutely wonderful. How do we pay for it? And you know, friends of the parks and foundations have made all the difference. I think Marlon could speak to that in terms of the Barnacle would not be in the position it's in, and maybe it would hobble along if it weren't for some dedicated people. Would you say?
Yes.
I think it also it helped that at the Deering Estate, since there's so many acres and then they had so many archaeological finds on it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, you know, Deering, he was looking for that place and restoring, and he didn't even know some of the stuff that was on the land that I think will help sustain it from generations to come, because it has so much there, not just the house, but it also has the Indian burial ground.
Right.
It has the Cutler Ridge archaeological site with all of that significance. So I think even with what she was saying with the stained glass, you know, that flight into Egypt used to be a symbol of a memorial. It's almost like Deering's memorial to our whole county, that he has all this.
No,
you
it
know,
really raises
to help preserve it, because it is a fight to keep that history.
And it always will be. Marlon, you had a comment.
I have a question. My ears perked up when you said the name Pitcairn in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Tell me what you were. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Pitcairn Place was right up the street for me. And I remember Jimmy and Johnny Pitcairn. They were older than I, but they were very good looking. Anyway, so is it a Pittsburgh connection?
So what I can tell you is, and I don't know his first name, but there was a stained glass panel purchased by the Pitcairn family in 1930. And Raymond Pitcairn, and it was formally installed at a medieval abbey called the Church of Saint Denis. And it is dated from the 12th century, and it currently is in a museum in Bryn Althyn, Brynatthyn, Bryn Althyn. I don't know if that's a suburb of Pittsburgh.
Not of Pittsburgh, maybe Philadelphia, because of Bryn Mawr, I think. I don't know. The Bryn name means nothing to me from Western Pennsylvania.
Okay, so those are some of the details I know about the Pitcairn piece. Okay. It's a similar one to the square one, and it has the same oak leaves around the outside.
And just another comment, last night I watched on PBS The Dig. It's a, you know, one time, I think 2-hour movie. It's slow moving, but when you talk about the architectural things that they found at Deering, this is in England, right before World War II.
Archaeological.
About an archaeological dig, and it was interesting.
I must say that
I saw it as well. It was very interesting.
It's a very interesting film. And by the way, I saw it on Netflix. So I don't know whether it's still there or not, but if you want to see it, it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, I like it.
Frances has her hand raised.
Where's Frances? Oh.
Maybe she didn't take it down after the first question.
Okay, and Nancy also. Nancy?
She said, I got an email from Nancy.
I keep losing signal, so I don't know if this was mentioned or not. But at one point, right when I lost the signal, I wanted to mention the fact that the Deering Estate is in the process of applying for Historic National Registry. Do I have the title correct, Lita and Becky?
Well, they're listed on the National Register of Historic Places already. We're trying to be designated a National Historic Landmark.
Correct.
Which
yes.
is an incredible honor, like Biltmore and Vizcaya.
Which will really protect the property as far as, you know.
Well, it will give it a lot more, certainly.
Prestige.
Yes, more panache. Nothing is guaranteed. Right. Don't think it's guaranteed, but more panache, and recognition is wonderful.
Well, even beyond more panache, the fact of the archaeological digs that have taken place there and what's been found and the historic significance of it. So, you know, again, and next year being our centennial, we're working very hard to get all that achieved. So that's a pretty significant accomplishment.
And don't forget, Nancy, you could speak to the ongoing project that's being developed of the mountain or the Garden Brook Trail, which was a feature that Charles Deering had at one point. And that's going to be an incredible, Nancy, if you want to.
Yes, Garden Brook Trail is a project really for the first time that the 100 Ladies are taking a project outside of the interior of the homes. We're working on the grounds, and Charles had done this water feature on the property. He had all kinds of piping and water because of his concern. Actually, it was kind of an irrigation system way back when. And so we are spearheading a project to restore the Garden Brook Trail, but one significant part of that is to restore this water feature, which has become a lot more complicated than we thought it was going to be, because we really can't touch the original piping that was what fed the water feature on the Garden Brook Trail. So hopefully that's going to be accomplished. And that is, by the way, also in tandem with a lot of the garden clubs are getting involved with this too. So stay tuned and watch for that, because there are going to be some additional beautiful walking trails that we're hoping will happen. I don't think the Waterbrook Trail is going to happen in time for the centennial, but we're doing our best. And right now we have just approved financing for the restoration of 2 very significant originals to the home, Baroque armchairs that are in the library, and they are being completely restored to the way they were originally. And they will be on display in time for the centennial. The same company that did the stained glass will be doing the chairs, and they're going to be documented. Elizabeth, my VP, who does an unbelievable job, they're going to be following by film the restoration of the chairs, similar to the way that we did with the stained glass. We're very excited about that too. So
that is wonderful, wonderful. Well, you have lots on your plate, don't you? I see that Dolly has her hand up again.
Yes, we do.
I do. I'm sorry.
We'd love to hear you.
One thing I'd like to mention is that national designation does not give protection to a property. It's only protected by local designation. It gives it prestige, but it doesn't give it protection.
Well, sometimes you find out the hard way, huh?
Yep. The next thing I wanted to say is that I have a small collection, about 15 pieces of renderings of stained glass windows. The artist's conception before they actually make it into glass.
Interesting.
It might make an interesting exhibit at Deering in relation to your stained glass windows, and I would certainly be glad to loan them at no big insurance costs, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I can send photos of them to whoever might be interested or in charge of such a decision, and we can go from there.
That would
That
be
would be nice
fabulous.
in terms of the technique and looking behind the scenes at the stained glass process, huh?
Right.
Fascinating.
So Dolly, you know, Becky and my contact information is located on the slides that we'll send around. And I think that Robert could also put you in touch with either one of us.
Yes.
Probably that sort of decision would be handled directly by Bethany Gray, who you saw in the video. And Jennifer, of course. Jennifer's the executive director of the Deering Estate. But I think it's a lovely offer and could be very interesting in conjunction with the pieces. So thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
In the chat window, I did put a link. I had the wrong link and I put the right link to the 100 Ladies of Deering. So that there's a way to contact right from there. If you have the chat window open, you can see that. And not only that, but when we send out another email, to all of our members, we'll be thanking everybody, and we'll have some contact information they can follow up there too. So that is absolutely wonderful. Well, this is really a first class presentation about a first class project and at a first class place. So you really hit on all the top three legs of a stool of a wonderful historic concept presentation here. So I can't thank you ladies enough for waiting a year and getting it right. But this is timeless, right? And so they're going to be on display for a long time. Was access to this room upstairs available before the stained glass was on display?
Yes, but it had different things in it. So now it is dedicated to showing the autochromes from his art collection that document his art collection as it hung in Spain. And then it has pieces which are the centerpiece. And then
So it relates more to the collection from Spain specifically now, huh?
Yeah.
That's entirely appropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's wonderful.
Come visit.
I have a question about the building itself. I've been looking at pictures, and around the windows and the upper story, the arch under the top of the building, there is a much more yellow. The stone comes through in some places, but it's much more yellow. Was that a repair, or was that the way it originally was?
My understanding is that there's a layer of plaster, and it was done as a decorative element on the outside to make the houses look older than they were. But someone else is welcome with more information on that to chime in.
It's a clever trick of
Just like George Merrick did throughout Coral Gables.
Yeah. The
house was built in 9 months. It's an amazing story of architectural prowess and getting a lot of labor in one place. So the house was built in 9 months, and it was built to look like it had been there for a long, long time. And he had a lot of stone people come in, artisans come in from Europe. That's a whole nother presentation. There's a lot we can talk about for that.
There was a whole lot of people living on or near the property during that time. I mean, the number of people that worked on the project was surprising. And there was quite a lot of different little outer buildings. And if you remember, I don't know who remembers, I remember as a kid driving up Old Cutler a million times. There were outlying buildings on the west side of Old Cutler that were part of the property too, including garages and some residence for the help, etc.
Looks like
Marlon.
Please, Marlon.
The Biltmore was built in 10 months.
Yes, I was about to say that, Marlon.
So, yeah, they started in March of 1925 and opened for business in January of 1926. You can't even get a front porch. You can't even paint your front porch. And
you can't get a generator installed in that time, can you, Marlon?
Can't do anything.
That is so true, and it's amazing that now it reminds me that I'll just throw a plug for next month's presentation about Aladdin City. Was a company called the Aladdin Home Company, which, like Sears, could send you a house mail order.
Wow.
But even further, they built your house in a day, and so they would have 125 laborers, really organized. All the parts were numbered, and they would build your house in a day. So, hey, we come from some real can-do people, don't we? And they when they decided to do this stuff, they didn't muck around, and they got right in there and they built stuff. And so, but it is pretty amazing when you think about it now. That something.
Well, they didn't have building departments,
right?
They
didn't wait 4 days for an inspector, did they?
Yeah. Stood up, really. They lasted all these years, and you didn't have 10,000 bureaucrats.
But also, you know what? People were thinking grand back then, weren't they? There was grand thinking. I mean, now I'm embarrassed to say that some of the architecture of people who build apartment buildings is just horrid. Yeah. I mean, you're leaving something that we all have to stare at for years and decades and maybe a century, for God's sakes, and it couldn't be more ugly. Whereas in some countries you go, it seems like architects are in competition with each other. You just put a building up next door and it's got to be more incredible than the one that came before it. And we just don't have that here. Marlon.
I I've been a villager for a long time, and I remember one lecture that really made an impression on me was Andres Duaney, Elizabeth Players-Iberg and her husband. But he said that he commented and was very complimentary of the work we had done to preserving the past. But he said, you have an equal responsibility going forward to see that good things are being built.
Right.
And that made such an impression on me that I agree with you. You're just seeing just buildings going up.
Well, and you can see that some things are an exception. I think we've been a little bit lucky in Coral Gables to some degree to get some of the better projects. But all of this nondescript stuff that just wouldn't be allowed in other places. What architect puts their name on that stuff? I mean, how about a little architecture? But anyway, we digress. Nancy has her hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to make one comment to add to Frank's query about the different color. One of the verandas, I believe it's at the front of the stone house. If you look above, there's a whole shell motif that was done in the ceiling. And that's an area, the next time you're ever over at the Deering Estate, if you go outside of the stone house and you look up and look at that area, it's really quite beautiful. And that's another area that's kind of earmarked on a wish list for restoration. But it was, it's a very interesting mosaic that was done there with shells.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, and to a certain degree, you use what you got, right? Do we know where the rock was quarried for the stone house?
Not with any certainty. That's a different presentation. We'll research that one, right?
Well, it
so much
would have been before.
Key for Vizcaya. I don't know about Deering, which was later than Vizcaya.
Well, they would have had the advantage of bringing it in on barges compared to some others. Like a lot of the building in Coral Gables was more local, and much of the best stone in the 20s came from Key Largo, where there were some really top-notch quarries, and that wouldn't have been too hard of a jump to get a barge from Key Largo over to the Deering Estate on the bay. So one never knows, but do look into that. That would be really interesting. And again, I think a lot of the stonemasons may have been Bahamians, and who knows, but maybe Italians. I mean, maybe they brought really some masters from Europe over. I know his brother had done that, I believe, with Vizcaya. Must have been a bit of a rivalry there with the two of them, a little bit, huh?
Just a little.
Let me just say, this has been just a delightful conversation with a wonderful presentation. And again, something really near and dear to us, the Deering Estate. May it last forever and just keep getting better all the time. And how wonderful that the ladies of Deering found themselves a reason to get together and a purpose to coalesce and do something wonderful. You can all be so proud of that, and your work isn't done. So I can see it going on for a long time. How wonderful that is. And it's not the easiest thing in the world probably to have a group that wants to help, and then a park that's trying to be a park. And so you find those little edges there somewhere where it has to meet up. But shouldn't every great property have a group of people so dedicated? Yes, and they don't, and you do. So there you go. Congratulations for all of that. And I just hope that presentations like this can give you a little bit of the credit you deserve for all the work that you do, which probably mostly goes unsung. So for me and all the members of the Miami Pioneers, thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Robert, for giving us this opportunity.
We finally got here.
Yeah. It was worth the wait, right?
And we'll all look forward to meeting up in the near future when people get together and say hello to each other and shake hands and share a drink and hors d'oeuvres at wonderful places. It's around the corner, it's coming, and we look forward to it. So without further ado, I want to just thank everybody who showed up, everybody who participated. Thanks for the good questions. Thanks for all the hard work. Thank you, Becky, for all that you do, and all the ladies. And we'll see you around the horn sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Robert. Enjoyed it.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Nice to meet all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet all of you.